and welcome to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about their recently released books. Welcome to the Author Roundup. I'm your host, Jenny. Today's episode centers on a book that brings parents and children together through storytelling and reflection. It uses short, rhyming stories and simple activities to open conversations at home, helping families communicate more openly, build stronger values, and guide children as they learn to distinguish right from wrong in everyday life. Our guest is a legally blind child of God, mentor, educator, and devoted family man whose work has been shaped by more than 20 years of experience in teaching, coaching, and guiding others in personal growth and communication. Please join me in welcoming the author of I'm B.L.I.N.D, Being Led in New Directions, Edward Hogan Saunders IV. Edward, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Tell us about your book, I'm Blind or B.L.I.N.D, Being Led in New Directions. Who is it for, and what do you hope families would take away from it?
So the book initially was written for my children. So I'm going into my 40th year of life. It was doing a discipline program that God gave me where I was going to sit down for 100 consecutive days and write 100 children's stories. Because the issue I was having at the time was wondering how long I'd be a parent and how much information I'd be able to get to my children before I was no longer a parent. With everything changing in the world and information so hard to come by that's true, and there's a lot of false information and information that just has been skewed in different ways. I wanted to make sure my children would know what was going on. But God was letting me know that if I only took care of my children, then they'd still have to contend with a world who's unfamiliar with what's going on. So for them to have a community to live in, for them to have people to marry and have friendships, the more people that have an open mind, the better. So he had me sit down and writing based on exactly what I was thinking about and how I was feeling. So each day I sat down without an outline in front of a large pad, which the first one's actually here. And if you got just sat down in front of it, you can see part of it. It's just a huge pad with a Sharpie. And I just was writing. And every day I started at the top of the page, ended at the bottom of the page. And I did that for 100 straight days. And
Mhm.
as I progressed through, the writings even got, I was, my vision was worse each day because I have a progressive eye disease. One of them is called retinitis pigmentosus, and the other one is visual snow. So I could see less, but I began to gain comfort as I was writing. As you see, this is further into December, and it's far
Mhm.
more work to the page. It's smaller, the spacing is different, and I had a better idea of how to tell where I was because I don't usually write much being blind, except for when I'm doing homeschool with my children. So I really want families to be able to take this and use it to spark conversation, to share their thoughts, and even to transmit information that they may not be telling each other directly. There's a lot of different stories in here that bring up conversations that will happen normally after a situation happens. Now we can get to the problems and the thoughts and the things that are necessary in life as we're growing, so we can use them as we're growing and not try to backtrack everything once we get older.
Mhm. It's interesting how your book came about. So it started out as something that you would want to give to your kids. But what made it the right time to share your message with other families?
The Lord did. So it was the thing I was praying about. And this was part of me discipline, being in discipline with God. So he was saying that everything that happens happens in timing. So he's like, if you sit down and do what you need to do, I'll show you what you need to hear. And as we were doing these different things, I'm looking at how the world, the landscape is. I work with a lot of children, a lot of families. I've been a personal trainer for 21 years. So I work with people to do every type of job under every religious background, sexual orientation, you name it. So I work with people to do everything. So the overall arcing theme is how things once were and how we're losing a lot of things that were wholesome, and we're getting a lot of confusion, and even seeing how the school systems work overall. We're seeing the higher dependency on automation, and there's less actual creativity and communication because the way that we're working right now is how a lot of students have been learning, especially going through the pandemic. So it's a lot more setup time to figure out, am I on the right angle? How do I log in? Did I type that right? What's my password? As opposed to really learning. You're trying to figure out how to manipulate the technology in front of you. So a lot gets lost in the mix because you don't have as much time to really focus on your education.
Mhm. Yes, so you talk about technology and the difficult parts of it, the challenging part, and also the advantages of it. But um, now, if you look at your book, it's described as an interactive devotional and family activity book. How should readers best use it to get the full experience of your book?
All right, so I have it in a few, we do it in a few different ways. So first off, what we normally do is we go through the instructions page, which will tell you to scrapbook, it'll tell you to draw, you can color, you can write, as you can possibly see here. I assume you can see it, I can't, but as you go through, you'll read the story and react to it. So there may be things in the story that you want to change, like it might say my brother and my sister, or it may just be only child, so they might even go through and scratch that out and change it to make it for them. It might talk about a story that you're interested in, so you may draw a picture based on that story. It may even cause you to have an idea that sparks in your mind about something completely non-related, so you should write that down too. There's also a place to write down how you're feeling that day, so you can use it as a diary. And even, for instance, my wife's book, she focuses on putting in family recipes. So on
Mm,
each page, it has nothing to do with the story. She just sticks a recipe in it that'll be used. So this will be a
mhm,
resource. I have a couple of people that are grandparents that are writing about their lives in the book for the family. Because, like, you go to the doctor's office, they ask you about your family history. Do you have history of high blood pressure or diabetes? And a lot of times you're like, maybe the person that lives in my house might have told me, but a lot of times we don't know what's going on, what we've had access to, good, bad, or indifferent. So the more information that can be in one place that you can trust, then you can gain actual wisdom from someone's actual experiences as opposed to Googling things or asking the chat GPT. Because a lot of times you can get information for anything, but we want to have a resource where you give a chance to put the input into your child yourself.
I see. So you can do anything you would want to do with a book. You can add whatever you want to add there. So your book also would ask the children and families to read, like you've said, react, edit, draw, highlight, share, and add anything they want to add to the book. Why was it important that the reader would become part of the creative process?
Because right now, it's most things we do is we react to it and we say we like it or we don't like it. And then we share whether we like or don't like something. And then we really losing creativity. A lot of the movies that come out are remakes. A lot of the stories that come out are cookie cutter and repeated. But every one of us have a different experience in life. So if you and I go through, even if we both talk about this interview after we're done, we'll see it from two different lenses. And whoever else watches it will pick up something different from it. They may hear it and I'm blind and be caught on with that piece, or they may hear it's about children, so it's not for me. But it's children in the sense of children of God, which we all are. So any point in life, it can be something that you work on. Even if you go sit with a therapist, the first thing that happens is you talk about what was your childhood like? How did you experience things? What did people tell you and not tell you? So we really want you to be able to figure out how you can draw something from you. Because of all the different wonderful things that exist in this world, all the mountains and trees and rivers and animals and architecture, all those things have been created. God only created one you. So it's like, why was that done? What is the purpose of me? How do I feel about things? How do I take in information? How do I share information? How do I feel? How do I love? What concerns are mine? Because a lot of times we put things on people and we say, oh, you're too young to feel this way, or you're too old to feel that way. But this way you can really figure out what do you even think in the first place? And then what do you need to know? So there's even book stories in here about, for instance, hygiene and why it's important. Because we're
Mhm.
all told to brush our teeth, but we're not necessarily told why. Even growing up, I know a lot of times you said you can't eat hard candy or you can't eat hard ice because you break your teeth. And I took it more as a challenge than a warning. So I, I can eat it. And then when you're in the dentist later on, like, oh, how much that root canal cost? Oh, that's what they meant. That's why I shouldn't have
Mhm.
been doing that. So even directly stating that in the stories are important too. So you can have conversation. And then you can feel however you actually feel based on what's being said. A lot of times we had sitcoms growing up where we'd sit down as a family and watch a TV show about a topic, and then they're showing it on the screen, and then you can discuss it and clean it up for how your family feels about it. Or you can not have a conversation in your family, but still hear the information. Like, hey, I cheated on my exam and I got caught. What do I do about that? And you
Mhm.
can talk about it without there being any blame on yourself or feeling like you're going to get punished or in trouble because it's not about you in the moment.
Let me pick up on what you said about conversations. A lot of children's books, typically, they're just meant to simply entertain, right? But your book is different because it asks families to pause, think, and actually talk. So, what kinds of conversations do you hope it would open up at home?
I hope it will open up conversation, period. A big piece of what
Any
happens is
conversation.
any because we're losing conversation because we're scrolling
Mhm.
or we're looking at something or we're trying to find what's next. So a lot of what slowed us down many years ago doesn't anymore. We knew that our TV show would come on at a particular date, particular time, so we could plan for that. We knew if we wanted to watch a movie, we had to go to the movie, so we planned for that. Or if we wanted to get a video, we had to rent it, or songs, or we had to turn on the radio at a certain time of day to hear a certain thing. But with us having all of this freedom to do whatever we want, whenever we want, we lose connectivity with each other a lot. Even like when my children would come home from school, one of the first things we did was an interview. So, how was your day today? Good.
Mm, right.
What'd you do? Nothing. What was your first class today? What happened in that class? Did anyone hug you today? Did anyone kiss you today? Did you fight anyone today? Did you enjoy your lunch? What did you see the other kids eating today? And then we just do a full interview and they got comfortable with it. And over time, they started just giving me that information because there's so much we miss because we don't make time to talk because there's just so much going on. There's so much in the news and then the economy, all the war, all kind of stuff is happening to where we're overstimulated with addressing and dealing with other things and ping pong and all the stuff around us that we miss what's directly in front of us. And then, even at the end of life, like we've had my children lost a bunch of their grandparents in the last few years. And when you're mourning someone, you're always wishing there was more time. But
Mhm.
if we take care of each moment that we have while we have it, that doesn't have to happen. The Bible says to teach us to number our days. So if we actually think about what's happening on that day and in that moment, the last thing you say to somebody could be the last thing you ever say to somebody. So if we're more mindful of it, like, wow, so Jenny, how was your day? Are you okay? What'd you go through today? Was it fun? Did you enjoy it? Did something make you laugh today? What I'm saying? Were you afraid of anything today? Is there something I can actually help you with? You want to talk through something? You want to read a story together? You want to hang out and really looking at people in the moment and not just circumstances.
Yeah. So your book will help start that conversation. So in your stories, you also write about technology, deception, groupthink, and the challenge of knowing what is real. What
Right.
concerns you most about the world children are growing up in today?
Well, we had perception when we were younger that there was truth if we watched the news, there was truth if we went to church, there was truth if we went to school. But now we really don't have that access the same way because we know things can be deep faked. So one of the stories in particular, my uncle had a picture of myself and my daughter that was a still photo. And he sent it to me for Christmas. And it was a video of Holly Jolly Christmas. And I was like, yikes, that's me. That's my daughter. But now we're singing and dancing. What if he decided to make us say something crazy? You know, then what? But it would have been completely possible because you couldn't tell that it was fake. And it's a cool thing, but it's also very frightening because now we don't know what's even real. We have news reports that are completely AI generated. We get scammers that call all throughout the day, all throughout the night. Those things that can be tricky as well. The emails get faked. So it may become a point where you have to have a code name when you even talk to your family. Like if
Mhm.
you're calling me, Jenny, I might have to have you answer the phone, three crickets and a crocodile. And that way I know it's actually you because our voices can be pirated. Even with us making this video right now, I'm saying so many words that it can be run into an AI generator and you can create a whole conversation that I made. You even have my writings online. So it's all different things. Like they have the data breaches. We think it's just our phone numbers, names, and emails, but it's your thoughts. It's what you think. It's what you want to purchase. It's how you feel. It's the way you communicate. All of those things are being taken and fed to feed AI systems, which could be used for beautiful things or horrible things. And if you don't build discernment into your children, how would they ever know the difference? They don't know
Mm-hmm.
a world where these things won't exist in. Like it's a big idea to some of my community that Obama was the first black president. But for most children, that was their first president, period. So what's the big deal? A lot of the things that have value to a generation before that won't have value to the generation currently because there's so many things that are open and available. So you don't know what's important and what isn't because there are artists today that can sell millions and millions of records and go on world tours that you may have never heard of before. A few decades ago, that wasn't possible. Like radio was based on the top 40 songs, period. So you would see these people, they'd be in commercials. Even now, we don't have commercials anymore. We have ads. So commercials were normally based on the show that you were watching and the audience that may be watching the show. But now a lot of times my children would say like, "Hey, I'm watching a cartoon. Why are they showing me an ad for the pens and diapers and lingerie and different things like and medication?" It was like, I don't care about those things because ad space is sold instead of commercials. So things have changed so much that it's hard to even pinpoint what's important from moment to moment.
Having said all those about making it or being very difficult for children nowadays to learn what is real and what is not, how do you hope your book will help children build discernment instead of just following what is popular?
I hope that it can get cause them to question. So we're making questions more okay in families because a lot of times in families you grow up, you've been taught not to question adults, not to question authority, which leaves you just following things that you later on find out aren't true in the first place or were deception. And a lot of times, our families, a lot of people have been manipulated and even molested because they were told you can't tell your parents or don't talk back to me or do as I say when you never learn to question what's happening in the first place. So one of the things that I find very important is the large number of questions that are in the books that are directed for families to ask to each other. So the children may ask and the adults may ask, so we can even see what's going on. How do you feel? Why do you feel that way? Why do you think that? I know you told me it's important. Why is it important? I'm trying to get families to have more than because I said so. I want, children to believe that this adult is someone I should listen to and honor because of who they are and what they're doing and what they're saying and how they feel for me, not just because they're taller than me or older than me. Because just because someone is taller and older does not mean that they know more, whether they have your best interest at heart. And they themselves may not have matured much farther than you have. So I really want to get people to communicate for real and really, if there's something that's important to me, you should tell me why it's important to me. If you tell me I can't get any more snacks, it would be great to let me know why that is, because it'll
Mhm.
harm your body. Like if you eat all those cookies and candies, those were things that helped your grandfather to pass. Had he not been consuming those things all his life, he wouldn't have developed the cancer that ultimately took his life. That may seem heavy, but oh, that's why I can't have that. Not just because you just don't want me to, or you're jealous of me, or you're hating, or because your life was a struggle, but there's real meaning behind these things. And since we have real meanings most of the time, I think it's important to share them.
Mhm. Yes, so it's really going to help them be able to discern now what's real, what's not, and what's good for them and what is not. One thing that I've noticed in your book is that faith is present throughout the book in a very direct but family centered way. How did your relationship with God shape the message of the book?
It's the entire message of the book. So God wants us to be as children to make it into heaven. But most of the time, what we do with children is we tell them to be quiet and back away. And that's the exact opposite of what Jesus did. So we want that to be open. We want to have alignment. So the Bible says alignment is God, Christ, man, woman, children. So if we all stay in alignment together as a unit, we can better work with each other. And also, we get to see how we learn and how we feel. We'll realize that so much of what's in us came from someone else in our bloodline. We say, oh, wow, he's just naturally a good artist. It's amazing he can just play the piano. Well, if you look in your bloodline, someone already did that effort for you. Someone already learned that. Someone already studied these different things. and you're tapping into it whether you know them or not. So these things are important. Studies show that we can pass down trauma and all kinds of information without being direct. So why not directly understand? You learned in a certain type of way. You may be sitting in class and feeling that you're inferior, but it's just not the way you learn. On our side of the family, we learn like this. And even my son and my daughter is very much like myself and my side of my family, and my son is very much like my wife and her side of the family. So the way that they learn and take in information is just different. So if you can understand that who you are comes from a lineage, then you can get all the tricks to actually how to work things for yourself. One of the lines I hate the most in the world is, I could have told you that. Like, why didn't you? That's information you should share. And a lot of times it comes out, as a reaction. So we want to be more proactive with communication, knowing that the first time you hear something, you're going to react to it emotionally. So if you get the instruction once, you may miss what actually matters. The second time, you're going to be thinking what can go wrong. And then the third time, you'll really understand. So if I kind of understand that, because that's how it works throughout the generations, these are things that we can teach early on and we can layer things. So instead of me saying, go upstairs and get your book bag, and then get mad at you when you don't come back down, or you come back down without it, I can tell you, I want you to go upstairs and to grab your book bag. So when we go upstairs, get your book bag and bring it back to me. Are you listening to me? Okay. What did I just ask you to do? To go get my book bag? All right, great. And then that may increase the chance of that actually happening. Whereas some people, you just may know, a different child may know to go do what they need to do. That's why we even have morning routines that we talk about in the book, that we actually use them with our family. Have you done your morning routine?
Mhm.
As opposed to, did you brush your teeth? Did you wash your face? Did you pray? Did you clean up your room? Did you get so you're making sure there's an expectation for what you're doing, and you want to layer that as we go, so that when you're into sports or a job or relationship, you understand there are things that you need to do in order to maintain success, and to have success repeatedly takes systems. So we want to teach family systems so we can have communication in a way that we can be successful, where we share information and we can actually know what's going on so we can help each other.
Mhm. So, in relation to what you've already said, the stories that would focus on ordinary moments, is that why you wanted to focus on everyday family life to impart those lessons to your readers? Was that your purpose behind that?
Yes, because I didn't have an outline, nor was I planning to write this book. So I was just writing stories. As I sat down, I was like, all right, God, I would pray, and then I would sit in front of the paper and just start writing. And my metric was, I start at the top and I finish at the bottom. Whatever comes out in there is the story. God allowed me to help them to rhyme because it kept me knowing what was going on. And I was also writing without being able to look back at what I had just written. So I just had to
Mhm.
keep moving forward. So I had to keep the stories in my head and just think about it. And my stories are very visual when you read them, because I felt like I was narrating what I was being shown by God. So I would see something happening, then I'd write about it and make it rhyme. And it was maybe every 2 or 4 lines at a time in my head, and I would try to write them down. And then it was tricky because sometimes trying to form letters and remember what I was just talking about, I was like, oh, oof, where was I? Okay, and then I would keep going from there, and I may have to go back and fix it. My wife had to go through and study my hieroglyphics to see what I was writing at times, but it's really about just sitting and doing something. Like even for 100 consecutive days, putting effort into something is rare. That's not something I've really ever done before. It was a sermon that I listened to a little prior to this project, where Bishop T.D. Jakes is called "The Grace to Make Changes" Part Two, where he was talking about giving God your 100%. And a lot of times we have a feeling about what we've accomplished in life or can accomplish in life when we really haven't put our all into it. So how much effort have you put into really doing something? So with this book, you can sit down and for 100 pages, you can do something. Even if on these 100 pages you write about your schoolwork and don't even read the stories. But I'm going to do something consistently to see what comes of it. And as you see, as you go through the stories, they get more complex, they get longer, they're more visual, because over time I got better at what I was doing, and it even helped me to write the stories that I'm writing currently.
So there's a strong theme of children being gifted valuable, and created with purpose in your book. What do you want children to believe about themselves after spending time with this book?
That what they have in their heads matter. That the ability to create is a gift from God. If there was nothing and you now made something, you're creating, and that's using the power of God directly. So you may not understand the Bible, you may not even get what they're saying in church, but you do know this page was blank, and now there's a drawing here. There's now words here. It was quiet, now I'm making sounds. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm doing something. What's coming from me? And that's important because a lot of times we'll look at, especially with social media, you see what these other people are doing, and you start to judge yourself based on what you're seeing. And I had even shown my children early on that what you're seeing may not even be realistic. Like there was a prank that my daughter saw on one of her friends, one of the YouTube people, and she went and did it to her brother, where she threw a bunch of glitter on him while he was asleep, which looked funny on that set on the YouTube, but it had very not funny in the actual house where there's glitter everywhere now. And glitter is incredibly difficult to get up. But she
Yeah.
didn't really see it as an issue because the little girl did it to her brother, and it was ha 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 funny. And I was like, well, that actually is set. They're getting paid to do this. Isn't their real life? It's a little different. So it's things you had to even explain. Like, when we grew up, when I was younger, I'm now 42. So when I was younger, we played with actual action figures and dolls and toys and had to stage them. Today's children more so watch that happening. So you see a lot of kids, the whole thing they just like to watch. Wow, they're unboxing a toy. I was like, do you want to touch your toy? You can create a toy. You can take this box and turn it into something. You can paint, you can draw, you can create. So really getting children to really see that they themselves can be their own entertainment, which you don't really have to do much anymore because you have access to whatever you want whenever you want it. But it was a point where the cartoon we may have wanted to watch only came on between 10 and 12 on Saturday morning. So the rest of the day, you had to figure out something to do. We had to go outside, play with sticks, and be pirates, or ride our bikes, or draw, color. How many times you would sit on the bus and just watch the rain run down the window and looking at the raindrops as if they're racing. Like children don't do that anymore because why would you? You can look at something. I can find whatever I want. I can hear whatever I want. So I don't have to think about myself. I don't have to create. And I lose space to create because I never quiet down and take the time to do so.
Yes, everything is just fed to them. Everything is really accessible. Okay.
Yeah.
So you also write a lot about parents, grandparents,
Mm.
siblings, and even extended family. Why was it important to show the whole family as part of a child's growth?
Because you need to know who everybody is, where they stand, and how each person was created and how it affects you. A lot of what we'll try to put onto our families is, especially when you have children, you try to fix what happened to you through them. And their worlds are just completely different. You know, my son is now 14, my daughter is now 9. In September and October, the birthdays will be here. But by the time I was their age, I mean, by the time I was my son's age, I already had a job. I had been working for 2 years. I forged my mom's name on a work permit and started working to, help support the family and take care of myself that early. My son doesn't have to do that, and he won't be doing that anytime soon. So his world is going to be different. So I can press him to pay attention and focus, learn, and do all these different things that the world he's in is just completely different. My father was not in my life by the time I was his age, even when I was writing this book. So I was thinking about, wow, he has such an advantage that I didn't have because of who's around him. Even my daughter, by the time I was her age, I was going to the store to get groceries and coming back with change and things, the corner store, maybe just be little milk and eggs, but he wouldn't be doing that. I was walking my sibling to school, like many of us in the mornings, we had to be responsible in different ways that this generation just doesn't. Like if you saw two kids walking down the street carrying groceries today, you might even call the police. The way we would hang out and ride our bikes and be in the neighborhood, it was so different because the community took care of the families. And now we're so isolated that many people don't even know their neighbors very well, and there's so much that you can have access to. So it just gets tricky. So you really want to be certain of what's going on and share more information so that we
Mhm.
can build appropriately and knowing the family members and what they've been through and who they are. And then, often when somebody passes, it can be based on tragedy. So you may just go to the person that's most familiar, but that might not be the person that you should be talking to. That person may not be a good example of how to live, but they could be a good example of what to avoid. That
Mhm.
person may have a skill set that they can teach you. Your grandparents, like, there's a bunch of stories in here where we talk about connecting with the generations. Where my children's great grandmother, who just passed last year at 90, when she was 19 before she had electricity in her house. We have three toilets in our home right now. She didn't have three toilets in her city growing up. It was all outhouses. You use lamps and candles to light up the house. You couldn't just flick on the switch. We don't they get to see that the things that they complain about, like the Wi-Fi going out, is so much of a incredible blessing that generation before them couldn't even have asked for. The things that upset us right now would be something beyond someone's wildest dreams, that they have the access to the information that they have and the comforts that they have. So you'll take things for granted when you shouldn't. And then you also lose a bunch of skill sets. Like, my grandmother, they grew up, they farmed everything that they ate. Most of us can't do that today. They made their own clothing. My grandmother had her mother's wedding dress that she wore, that she made herself. Like, things of that nature. Like, we have stuff in here, like there's a fruit bowl on my table right here that's probably somewhere around 200 years old. But because it's been shared through the family, so it's pieces you want to be able to connect to, and you get that stuff by talking to the family. On the flip side, the senior generation gets help from the youth because of all the technology. My
Mhm.
grandmother couldn't figure out how to log on and use online banking and have her doctor's appointments by herself. And you don't really want to trust other people per se, but you can trust your own children. And they've been using technology forever. So it's, oh, yeah, grandma, show you. Here you go. Oh, wow, you're good at that. So he's showing her technology, and she can teach him how to sew and how to do find the words and how to bake different cookies. Like, I had one of my clients come over. He's in his late 60s. He taught my children how to make snickerdoodles and chocolate chip cookies, including ingredients I never even heard of. It was cream of tartar was one of them. So it's different things that can be used, and we can help each other in a way that's organic, especially when the world has so many people that have access to us that may mean us harm or may just not know any better or maybe from a different world altogether. So being able to figure out within your own sphere what's going on is going to be better. So this book, we're trying to help do that as well, and even get to put some things into your mind because maybe, my children are rare in knowing their great grandparents. They've known at least four of them. Most people don't know their generations that far back. A lot of people don't know their own parents. So if we could put in the story information, these things that we talk about aren't as far back as you think. And I talk about the timelines of things that are historical based on birthdays of our actually family members. So my grandmother and grandfather were born in 1934. There's a picture on the wall of Jesse Owens at the 1936 Olympics. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh yeah, your grandparents were two at that point. We talk about the different things, the civil rights movement. You're like, oh, when your actual, not even your great grandparents, when your grandparents were born, women couldn't even have their own bank accounts at that point. Things have changed so much now. So it's not,
Mhm.
it doesn't seem like it's ancient history. It's right behind you. So some of the stuff that we need to know about is really close and really local. And in their time, things have changed so much. Like, for us, we had 8 tracks and we had VHS and Betamax and microfilm and CDs and MP3s and Blu-rays. And Blu-ray was really a hot thing for a very short period of time. Even iPods. Like, you might have forgot those things even existed. DVD players. You send me something on a CD today. Do you even have a device that can take a CD? Does your computer even have a CD-ROM drive? But I remember when that was a brand new technology, when we were writing the CDs and making our own stuff, like even owning the stuff that you watch, your entertainment is up to streaming for a lot of people. So it comes on streaming or leave streaming, and you have no access to it anymore. So even owning physical things is different as well. Even video games, like you pop a video game in and you would just play it. Now I pop a video game in and my son has to download something and has to. It's all. I was like, I don't even play it. Because it's just so frustrating to me. Like, you have the disc, I bought it for you, let's play it. But we can't because that's not how things work. So having a family connecting so you can see all the different elements and then you can kind of pull in things as necessary is really important.
Yeah, it just broadens your perspective when you hear about how different life was like with your parents and your grandparents. I want to pick up on what you said about losing skill sets because everything comes a lot easier now for the kids. In your book,
Right?
you introduce children to ideas like planning, discipline, ownership, investing, work ethics, and legacy. So, why do you believe those conversations should start early?
It should start early because children don't morph into something different when they become adults. A child is just like an acorn, and an acorn is a full oak tree. But with time and nourishment, it'll flow and flourish and turn into something different. It's the same thing with our children. So, as a personal trainer, the majority of my clientele never worked out before they got a punch in their stomach. They were never taught how to stretch. So we have all these injuries and ailments that don't need to be there. Even our eating habits, we don't address those things because when you have youth, your body kind of holds itself together for the most part. But as you begin to age, things start to change. But we already know that's going to happen, so why wouldn't we tell you right away? We know that you're going to need to do things with money and with currency. It's more about time in the game than anything else. If a child starts having a custodial account set up for them with their youth, and you drop a few dollars in here and there, by the time they're 18, they could have financial freedom already. So their education can be based on what they want to learn and how they want to learn and how they want to live, as opposed to us trying to scramble to get a job to fulfill a need that could have already been taken care of, even with the smallest amount of money. Even as a story, and they're letting them know that, you spend time on Roblox, you can own part of Roblox. You go to McDonald's, we can own part of McDonald's. And if we have those things over time, these create what we call generational wealth in the world. But if the information is the true wealth, really teaching you about what you can be doing and addressing the things that you know will be important. We could tell you that you should wear deodorant and why. We don't have to wait until you start to smell to say something to you. You know what I mean? Like, this is how you should clean yourself. All the different things that matter, we can get to it right away instead of waiting for it. And a lot of the stories in here, we address those things because
Mhm.
that stuff is important. You know what I mean? Like, even with driving, I was talking to one of my friends recently. I was like, "Have you done any work with your child who's tall enough and 14 going into 8?" And she's like, "Well, nah, she's not old enough to get a permit yet." I was like, maybe in a little private area, you can do a little driving with her, or at least explain to her how the vehicle works, because you don't know when she may have to drive a car.
Mhm.
What if she's abducted and has to get away from somebody? What if you hit your head while you're driving? We have to move the vehicle. We don't know when an emergency is going to happen, but we do know things can happen. So if there's a skill set, like cooking in the house, my children can prepare all of their meals, no matter
Mhm.
how as serious they are, because maybe they'll need to. They don't know that when we leave the house that we'll be coming back.
Mhm.
So how would you move forward? Being able to feed yourself, you may have to do the rest of your life. You may have to be able to stand up and sit down. And a lot of our seniors end up dying because they can't function physically. What if you created habits of walking and bending and stretching and moving that you live with so that's not an issue? What if you start to really fast and think about what you're consuming and learn how the body works? What if you know how to sew so you can fix something instead of having purchased something else? The Bible says it'll become a day that Christians will not be able to buy or sell without having the mark of the beast. So if you're going to know that you're going to walk into this environment at some point, why not prepare yourself for it today? With what it costs to go, even with me just being 40, I remember when a McDonald's hamburger was 29 cents and a cheeseburger was 39 cents. I remember when the dub, which is $20, someone let you borrow $20, you can have a whole week of entertainment. You can go to the carryout, you can get food, you can go get pizza, you can go to the movies, you can go to the arcade, you can travel. Today, $20, like, what can you really do with it? Like, things have changed so much. So how can we actually function? So teaching each other functionality, how to grow, how to maintain a plant that can just help you in your house. You know what I mean? All these different things are important. So we should share it.
Okay, so some of the stories I've noticed are playful and fun, while
Hmm.
others would touch on heavier and more serious topics such as peer pressure, war, deception, and all that. How did you decide how honest you can be with the young readers?
I was as honest as the conversations I would have with my children. So, for instance, the story about war, it was a time when my daughter was it was around October 8th when they had it was the issue that they were having riots and they were talking about Gaza. We live right in the DMV area, so we're maybe 8 miles from the White House. So one day she was coming home on the bus and she couldn't get home because there was a protest happening. And she's like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "Oh, because there's a war." And the questions that are in that story were actual questions she asked me. Why are the adults feuding? Why are they fighting? Are we in danger? Might we die? Like, what's happening with us? And for us here in America, that's an issue, but it's an issue all over the world. So it's something we should be talking about. In our classes, we have active shooter drills. I had to get down underneath my desk today, and they told us to lock the door, and it was really scary. I didn't know what was going on. Like, these are the things that are happening now. And no longer you just have regular fire drills. So because all these things are happening, it's communication. Like I had to go and find where my daughter's bus was and get her off the bus when there were police standing in front of the bus blocking it. And there was no information given to the parents whatsoever. I just know that my daughter wasn't there when she was supposed to be, and a bunch of parents were waiting on the corner for the bus to show up. So I went and searched for her, and we found the bus. And I told the other parents this is where the bus is, and got her off the bus and figured out what was happening. So things like that happen. Another instance where weapons in school. If you know that your friend steals cars and carries a gun, and he says, "Hey, get in. We're not going that far." What do you say to that? So I put it in the story so you can figure out as a parent or as an adult or as a child what to do with that situation before you're in that situation. Because what do you do? A lot of the stuff we don't actually get to talking about. And one of the stories starts off with parents only respect physical pain because we often tell children, you don't know what love is. You're too young to be in love. You're too young to be depressed. What you have going on? And the rates of people unaliving themselves are tremendous and being coaxed into it by what they see online and things of that nature. So a lot of times, just a conversation is enough to change something. Even with my clients, like somebody will be like, "Oh man, your client looks really good. I can see how their body's changing." I say, "Well, go respectfully tell them that because you don't know what's happening in that person's head, and you just saying, 'Wow, you're looking really good,' that could change everything for a person." You know what I mean? So really getting to the place of let's communicate, let's share, so that some truth can settle in when we got all kinds of things bouncing around in our head. Sometimes we can connect with somebody else. Whenever two or more gather, God is there also. So now we can communicate, figure some things out, as opposed to me trying to figure it out by myself or looking into resources that just give me information that may or may not be accurate.
Difficult topics to talk about with kids, but you sometimes really just need to talk to them about it, right? Okay, so this time I would like to talk
Yeah.
about your experience as an author, Edward. So your book includes
Mhm.
100 short rhyming stories. What was your writing process like? You might have shown us already earlier how you did it. How did you stay
Mhm.
consistent through all of the 100 entries?
I found a place where I can go each time. So I have my little man cave set up where I can go in there. I know I can be uninterrupted, and I know I have access to it whenever I want to. I made sure that every day I've sat down and wrote the date at the top of the paper, and I thought about my first line. So whatever the first line was going to be, because the first book I believe was like a family run. So I was like, let's talk about that, going outside and running together, because it's important. I'm a track and field coach and athlete as well, so that's important to me, and it's such a good thing for the body, and it gets the family going. So each day I just sat down with a topic that either came to me or I'd ask somebody about it. One of the stories on December 21st, my neighbor's daughter dressed up for her birthday like a princess, and that's how she went to school. And I was like, oh wow, huh. And that made me think, okay, I can write a story about that. So in the story, my daughter has been asked, what she wants for lunch ultimately is what comes out at the end. But during the time, she's daydreaming and she sees herself as a queen and she's talking to the whole kingdom and saying, all right, making a decree about what they'll be doing for the day and what they're going to eat. And the story ends out funny because she's like, I don't know. But it just shows how like the thought process works and the imagination works. So each time I just sat down and wrote about a different topic that I thought was important. So his topics in here about another topic about imagination is my son sitting in the room in the dark and thinking about what he wants to do for the rest of the day and how he's going to get it done. And by the end of the story, he's created the Marvel Universe because he
Mm.
wanted to play a game, he wanted to be able to teach somebody something, and he wanted to create something. So all of those things came into play. There's a story that we wrote from. A lot of these stories are from my real life, so it's things we had already done that we put into it as well. Like one of them starts where I have the children sitting around in a circle and they each draw a picture. And then after they draw a picture, I have them all write a sentence or a few sentences underneath the picture. And then after that piece, they go and they combine them together into one big story. And then by the end of it, they've created their own movie. And it was
Mm-hmm.
just, and that was a fun exercise that we actually did. And we actually have recorded that my children did with their one of their close friends many years ago. So each time it was just something that was important, and then sometimes it was based on the date. So there's a story that we wrote on Thanksgiving. There's a story I wrote on Christmas Eve and Christmas and things like that. So depending on what the date was. And you'll notice in the book, it's listed as the dates and not the actual titles to any book. None of the stories have titles, it just had the date that I wrote them. Because what I want the reader to do is to take from it, see what they get out of it, give it their own title, write their own dates down, they wrote their own thoughts and feelings and emotions, and they can see their own progression as well. Because I saw a
Mm-hmm.
lot of progression in how I even write from the beginning to end myself as the author. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't set out to even write this book. So the fact that this book exists is like, wow, huh, this is pretty cool, you know. You know what I mean? Even being able to sit in front of you right now, it starts on what happened on October 1st, 2023.
Mhm. So the goal was to write one story a day, and you
Yeah.
somehow built that into your routine. What was the hardest part of the publishing journey for you?
Honestly, figuring out how to even get it done. So for quite some time, I shared manuscripts with people of means and people all over the country that I've met in different ways, but getting actual information of how to do something is very tricky. There's plenty of information that exists that you can do things, but actually following through was really difficult. And I was listening to a radio, and there's a person by the name of Charlemagne the God. He has a company, imprint for books called Black Privilege Publishing. And I was like, well, maybe I can work with him. And he talks about books, and that's where I hear information about books the most. So I looked online to figure out how to connect with that, and that's when I found out that it's a subsidiary of Simon and Schuster. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, let me see how to connect with Simon and Schuster. And that's when they told me that Archway Publishing is what's on there, and they have it as a self-guided publishing thing, and they have all these mechanisms to help you get through the process.
Mhm.
So I felt like that was awesome because I have the creativity, but that was it. I don't know anything else about putting a book together. So as they sent out templates of everything that you need to be doing and how you can do things, I got the top package because I wanted the most assistance. And the first person I talked to there by the name of Joanne, she was so amazing and broke it down to me. Even when I was about to get a lower package, she was like, it just wouldn't make sense to do that based on what you're trying to do. And she really explained it to me and all the different benefits of it. So we were able to go through and fill out these templates so that this awesome work could be created. Because I already had the whole book, I already had the imagery for it, but that's not enough to make this be in front of me. Even to get me in front of you, there's all these different things or options that you can get. So it's great to really be able to see what can be done and what's necessary. And then even answering questions like with this interview, I didn't pre-plan what I was going to say. I like to really be in the moment and see what God gives me.
Mhm.
So being able to have a stimulus is what I thrive on. So whatever around me happens, that really pulls me in. So have someone ask me, well, how would you describe yourself? I don't know. How much space do I have? And I sit down and work on it. But what do you want to say on the back of the book? What's supposed to be said on the back of the book? So I thought about what I would put there, you know what I mean? So all these different things really were prompts to keep things going. And this is how I thrived when I was in school growing up. There were always prompts for something. There was here's a warm up, tell us how you feel about this and react to it in a different ways. But actually creating something for yourself is something I want to be able to do. So with the book process, this is something that can live forever. So I was very um, focused on how to actually get it done, but it helps to have some type of a template to go off of because I could have just put it up myself initially. I drew a picture, you know, I also draw, even though I'm blind, it's pretty cool art, but it would have been something that I drew, something that I created on my own. But now there's something even greater, and I don't have the ability to bind these or to make this paper or any like even when they asked what size book should it be, I was like, I don't know what size should books be. You know what I mean? So having some type of a outline really helped me to put things together, and even for the books that are coming in the future.
Now that the book is out, What's the most meaningful feedback that you've received from your readers?
The most meaningful feedback is that it's helpful, that it's getting them to think, that it gets you to create, and it gets you to share with people. And that's what I really enjoy. I know that there's a lot of different ways you can do those, but I like that people get to see what's in the book and they can make some for themselves. A lot of times they remark on it, whether it's good or not, and that's not the biggest thing for me. I really like that it makes you think. It gets you to create for yourself and gets you to share. That's the most meaningful thing for me, is that you get to see what comes from you. Because
Mhm.
what comes from me is only there to get something pulled out of you in a sense.
And that's what you've set out for the book to do. Must have
Right.
felt amazing after hearing this from your readers.
Yeah, definitely.
What's next now?
Oh,
Mhm.
as next, this
Yes,
book has
for you
actually
and your
inspired
book.
me. Yep, so this book has even inspired me. I'm teaching some workshops now, which people can access via our website. But I've even written a, a, a second book based on this book, where the first one is called A Surprise from My Sister, where
Mhm.
it's two siblings that are talking. They're older women, they're in their 60s, and one of them's actually in the hospital. And in the time that she's been in the hospital dealing with her ailment, she actually went through and filled out the book, and it brought in a lot of things in their family and their dynamics and brought them a lot closer. And there's a second book that I'm currently writing, which I'm maybe halfway into it now, where we're using stories from the book to tell a different story about children, creating a Father's Day event. So even just
Mhm.
continually building off of these stories and sharing stories of people, we're looking to get into the school systems, and we have our Zoom program. So if somebody wants to log in and do workshops to talk about it, and of course, over time we'll do merchandising and things of that nature, but really just getting more people in front of the book so they can have time to create for themselves, whether they buy the book or they just see parts of the book online and they do their own creation, whether we're doing events about the book. I'm even partnering with churches going forward, and we're doing programming talking about the book. So however we can share and get creation to happen and get information disseminated through the community, that's what we're looking to do going forward.
Very exciting. A lot of things to look forward to. So, for our
Mhm.
viewers and listeners who would want to connect with you, Edward, learn more about your work or your books or purchase your book, where should they go?
They should go to I'm being led in new directions.com. So right on our website, it's based off the full title of the book, I'm being led in new directions. In there, you'll be able to see what events we're doing. You'll be able to reach out to us directly. Um, Over time, when we're doing different, you'll see photos from the events or audio and things of that nature. So all the stuff that you want to see about the book will be right in there, even the things that are coming up later. And we intentionally didn't use any social media because social media is all over the place. There's We log on to what our page is, and you end up on something else. And to keep you from being confused on what's right and what's wrong with us, we want the families to focus on that on their own, but to be able to come to us and know that if you're on our web page, it's all information that we've cultivated on purpose to share and to help. And there's nothing else that can get mixed in there, get lost in the sauce.
Mhm. Edward, thank you for sharing your time and your insights with us today. It has been a meaningful conversation about family connection, communication, and guiding children through values and understanding. If you would like to explore this devotional further and complete the activities with your families, you can get your copy of I'm Blind, Being Led in New Directions by Edward Hogan Saunders IV. It's available in softcover and ebook formats on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Archway Publishing online bookstore, and other resellers. To our viewers and listeners, thank you for being with us today. We'll see you in the next episode of the Author Roundup.